What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Radical Cruise podcast, where we dig deep to reach higher, and of course, always progress through action. I am your co-host, Peyron Baxter.
I'm your co-host Ram Sandoval.
Rom, happy Father's Day, first of all. How are you doing, man? Happy Father's Day to you and to your, I guess just to you, not really to your children, but I guess they have a great dad. So happy Father's Day to them for having a great dad.
Well, yeah, happy Father's Day to you as well. I got my best pop shirt on. Might not mean a lot to people in the South. Who call it
That's
soda
that's what we call it in Pittsburgh. We
in
call
the
it pop.
okay in the Midwest. Yeah, we call it pop. So, I got this shirt on today. But yeah, big weekend, big
Big
week.
weekend. Of course, it was the military parade for Donald Trump that ultimately was a fizzle more than it was a bang. But more than that, the people showed up in the streets across the country, and there are some international protests as well for No King's Day. And of course, there's always critiques, there's always scrutiny that we can apply to it as folks are getting activated and wanting to do more. I think on this show we've always said that it absolutely needs to be amplified to create demands of the government, not just leveraging grievances. Of course, it's important to say yes, I'm upset about this, but of course, what do you demand of the system? Do you
Mhm.
think the system works well and the problem is just Donald Trump? Because that is a fool's errand. So we're hopefully pushing the privileged folks within our community to understand that. Our listening base, I think they're getting that as well. But you were out there, right?
Yeah, I was out there. I actually went to two in the area. I was in Waxhaw first, which is a small town,
Hmm.
as you know, and I was surprised to
Where I live.
see somewhere upwards of 300 or so people on the streets, and they were out there. So it was encouraging to see. And then I took a ride over to Monroe, uh, where there was about almost 1,000 people. I think the number was somewhere not around 900 from the
Wow.
police, and that was the largest protest I think probably Monroe has seen. It was definitely about almost double, according to some other people, than last time, which was the no hands off. So yeah, just yeah, I mean they're out
What
there.
was the vibe? Just give us real quick. What was the vibe, man? Was it like, oh my God, was it like BLM 2020 summer or was it like
It was not, especially
something
because I was in
something else?
Chicago then, but
Okay,
it
not
was a
right.
little
I
more,
was in Charlotte at the time.
yeah, it was a little more, along the lines of a parade and, uh, not as much energy, as in like not as much soul, right? So,
Yeah, the
uh,
soulless, the
yeah,
unseasoned was
it
out
was a
there.
little bit quiet, and cars honked and people shouted. But in Monroe, I think there were some groups out there, a few different groups that were able to help
Yeah.
energize the people out there. And by the end, I would say it was far more energetic. A lot of support from people driving by. So from a visibility standpoint, and I think it felt good for me being out there, just kind of refilled my cup, right? I know we talk a lot about, well, what's the purpose and things like that, and I think we should talk about that and be critical of that.
Right.
However, a lot of the people out there I do know are, trying to figure out ways to put in work however they might look for them, and it was a little bit energizing for me as well, kind of after all these months of things. So,
No, yeah, I think that's good, man. I think as the late Joe Madison used to say, the difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice.
mhm.
And that's one thing we've been talking about on this show. In fact, I even had a post today that kind of was reminiscent that we talked about a little bit last night. I just want to quickly read it here. It says, "So now that No King's Day is over, now what?
Mhm.
What was the ask, more importantly, demands that made these protests? I know it's called No King's Day, but what is being demanded? What happens if the demands are not met? Were there voter registration drives? Was there any political education of the masses as to how to organize effective resistance? Were there opportunities to form mutual aid and defense networks? What's the next step beyond waiting for the next gathering with random signs? These questions must be addressed across the country in communities if there is a true populist-based resistance movement against the fascist movement. Hashtag no more symbolism over substance. So I just wanted to kind of, again, not trying to knock people's energy, but we got to be serious here because certain people will die, certain people will be harmed, and we can't just say like, well, I'm ready for the next protest come August. Like people will be harmed, people's families will be torn apart, by ICE, and black people are still getting thrown in jail for nothing right now. So like we just can't say I'm upset about my Social Security, my Medicare, which is all important because they are all parts of the piece of the system that is a death dealing system that many of us have been talking about for hundreds of years. So as we talk about resistance, I'm going to segue that into our guest so we don't hold her up anymore, and have our, I know we've just been kind of just bumping our gums, but it is the amazing author of the fantastic book. I don't know if you guys can see this here. We Refuse, a a forceful history of Black resistance. Kellie Carter Jackson. There she is.
Hey.
That look, this is big time for us. We're Kellie, we are a new podcast. We've only been around for a few months. So getting you on this show has been great. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Listen, I am just happy that people are reading the book. I'm happy that they're grappling with it and want to be in conversation with me.
That's right. That's right. Well, if you don't mind, if you could just introduce yourself to our listeners, our guests. Again, we're a growing community, so we're trying to expose people to as many different historical and educational aspects as possible. So if you could just give us a little bit about yourself and what made you write the book.
Yeah, sure. So I am a historian and a professor. I teach at Wellesley College. I'm the chair of the Africana Studies department. This is my third book. First book was the edited collection. Second book was on force and freedom. I looked at the abolitionist movement. And this book was actually not a book that was supposed to exist. It was an op-ed first, and when I
Mm.
wrote it during June 1st of 2020, afterwards it kind of went viral on the Atlantic, and a bunch of publishers were like, hey, is this a book, and I was like, sure, yeah. But it was never meant to be what it was. I was angry, I was frustrated with 2020, and I wanted to write something that was the kind of book that I wish I had read in that moment. And so this is the result of it. We Refuse is the result of some of that frustration and some of that anger, which I actually think is a very useful emotion when you're writing. Like people are like, oh no, you shouldn't write angry, or oh no, like you should be objective. But to me, I kind of feel like the opposite is true, that when you have that anger, that it serves as an engine really to get you to think about these bigger ideas and like really sit with them and really have to articulate them in a way that feels powerful. And so that's what I wanted to do.
Oh man, that's so powerful. And what made you come up with the title "We Refuse"? I mean, because it could have
Oh,
been like Black resistance or Black people
yeah.
throughout history standing against. I mean, what? I mean, because I think those two words are just like, it hits you right between the eyes.
I This was not actually the first title of the book. The first title was horrible. It was called like Black Violence in Four Parts or something like that.
Oh
And
wow.
my husband was
Okay.
like, that sounds like a play. I don't know what that is. So I was like, okay, scrap that. Then it was going to be The Remedy. And then the publisher was like, The Remedy sounds too medical. And so,
That
and
sounds like
we
a Dr. Dre album or something.
yeah, we were in the height of COVID, and so I wanted something
Wow.
medicinal. I don't know. And then I actually was on vacation with my husband, and we were just like, workshopping ideas. And I said, "What about We Refuse?" And he
Mm,
was like, "Oh, that's good. That's good. That'll preach. That'll preach." And I was like, "Oh, I love this stuff because it's not I refuse. It's we. It invokes the collective. It invokes the community, which I really wanted. I didn't want this to be sort of just an isolationist type of
right.
title where people only think about themselves. I didn't even want it to be She Refuses, even though I focus a lot on women. I'm like, no,
Hmm.
it's we, it's the collective. And so the title is powerful. And I think the cover is really great. Taha Clayton is a Brooklyn-based artist. He did
Mm.
the cover of the book, which I love so much. It's called Soldier of Love, and
Oh,
it's so
yes.
forceful. Like I could not have asked for a better cover. It just stops you in your tracks. And I think all good covers should be arresting. So that
Yes, yes. No, it's ironic. My mom came over on Friday to take me to lunch for Father's Day, and I told her that you're going to be on the show because she knows I read a lot, but she doesn't keep up with all the books that I read. And I was like, "Mom, I love this book. and this book is very dog-eared and a lot of like notes in the margin, a lot of LOLs, a lot of, oh man, this is us. And she was like, and the first thing she said was, that cover, Payron. Oh my goodness. Like that cover, like that's a beauty. She loved the way she looks. She loves the power that
Yeah.
the picture extols. So like it stopped my mother, who's 62 years old, who was born not with all her rights, not her full citizenship in this
Mhm.
country, to see a title re-refused and then to see her son, of course. I'm always going on about the book to so many people, but to
Mhm.
be like, man, to her to see that on Friday and be like, that's an amazing cover. So I think
Yeah.
it did what it's supposed to do.
It
So
did. It did. I gotta give a shout out to my publisher because he's my editor is the one that found the picture. He went to an art gallery and he saw it first and said, "Huh, that looks like Kelly's cover." And he was like, "Do you like this?" I was like, "Do I like it?" I was like, "I love it." So yeah,
Oh, so
I
that's
should say
interesting. So like it was already a picture and
I
and
was
you used it.
already painting. I don't know if you can
Oh.
see above me is like a print
Hmm.
of the painting. But I should say this because I think it's really important. Most authors do not get control over their covers or over their titles. That is the
Mm.
marketing department, that's the art department. You can kind of say what you like or don't like, but for the most part, you don't have a whole lot of control over those things. So the fact that Seal Press and Basic Books was willing to say, "Hey, what do you want the title to be? Hey, we actually like that title. Hey, what do you think of this cover? We hope you like it." And I did. Was really exciting for me because most authors just don't get that. They don't get like a green light privilege.
Right. Well, slam dunk, slam dunk. To as we're in a time of people always trying to BS us, or as you call bovine scatology, I love that part in the intro, right? I was like, I'm now calling BS bovine scatology. It's a great. What made you break it down into these five sections, right? We have revolution, protection, force, flight, and joy. And I know that's not an exhaustive list, as you said, but like, what about those five groups or sections did made you choose those five?
Yeah, I chose them because to me they were the most successful. They were the ones that resonated the most with me, in which I felt like I had personal connection to either seeing or reading about or understanding firsthand how those tactics had been effective. And I think that's what I really wanted. There's no shade, but there's no chapter on like marching, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with marching because sometimes
Right.
marching works, right? But like I felt like we're using some old tools, some ineffective tools, and I
Mm,
wanted to think about what has worked in the past. And revolution, hands down, his I needed to start there. Like, and because I'm a
yes.
historian, I'm always looking at the past to be like a blueprint or a roadmap for where we go. And so looking at the age of revolutions, looking at the Haitian Revolution, looking at the abolitionist movement and what they did and how they utilized protection and how they utilized the press and force, and thinking about black gun ownership and how much
Hmm.
we don't talk about black gun ownership outside of gangsters, you know what I mean? Or
Right.
outside of like a drug criminal context.
Hmm.
Like there's legitimate utility to black gun ownership that is not limited to crime.
Right.
And I wanted to talk about that. And then flight, because what's more successful than the Great Migration? Like you've got millions of black folks that leave the South, and I'm a product of that. My family was in Louisiana and Mississippi, and they migrated up to Detroit and got better jobs and have reversed migrated back to the South, but for cheaper housing and better
Right.
jobs or opportunities. But flight was a big part of my life as well. And then I just couldn't do this book without doing joy. I really
Mm.
wanted people to understand that joy is a weapon, that joy is a tool, that laughter and comedy and culture and food, that these aren't frivolous things, that we need fellowship. We need to be able to laugh and to be able to gather, and that joy does that work.
I love that. I love that. Just getting into it here. So, in the opening of the book, we start off with revolution, and one of the most impactful. I mean, I learned so much from that chapter. But as we're thinking about how we're in this moment now of, I say, quasi, at least mental revolution for a lot of people waking up to things. A lot of us
Mhm.
always had to live in that reality of trying to fight against the system. As we go from the Haitian revolutions to some of these other types of abolitionist revolutions, how can today's movements embody that radical spirit and not settle for incremental reforms, in your personal opinion?
Mm. That's good. Honestly, I think you kind of need both. I mean, I think you need revolution, but a lot of it's incremental, and but that's not nothing. Like I think it's a all hands on deck approach, and I think that sometimes we miss out on the big revolution because we're so focused on doing like incremental well-paced change, and then
Hmm.
sometimes we miss out on the little change that we could make because it has to be revolution, like, so I feel like there needs to be balance in which we're trying to achieve all things at the same time. The little things don't matter. Like I think sometimes we poo-poo local politics, and I'm like, oh, all politics are local.
That's
All
right.
politics are local. Before they become global, they're right at your front door. And the Haitian Revolution for me is something that I think is just so instrumental in thinking about like what a revolution is. Because when we think about the American Revolution and the French Revolution, there's nothing really revolutionary about it. I mean, like slavery
Mm,
still exists. Women are still unempowered. Native Americans are still being pushed off their land. Poor white people get a little bit, but not much. Like there's not much that actually structurally changes in the lives of marginalized people. But the Haitian Revolution does something radical, which is it says, no, a revolution has to replace a broken system with a better one. You cannot get revolution without the abolition of slavery. You
that's right.
cannot get revolution without, like an end to colonization and colonialism. And that's what Haiti does, and it pays a hefty price for that.
Yes, it does. To
But
this day.
to this day, it is still paying a hefty price. But revolutions are also starting points, they're not finish lines. And I think that's really important too, because you can't just we do this a lot in history. We sort of spike the ball whenever like a
Mhm.
law has been passed, or and we think that it's not like that it can't be reversed. And it's like,
Right,
oh no, no,
right.
you can't just get change and then it's permanent. No change is permanent. I mean, you have to keep fighting and working to sustain the victory that you've gotten. And so I think we could all take a lesson from Haiti. And I also think that we put, because of the way that we see Haiti now, and because the way that it's been penalized,
Yeah,
we don't look deeper into its history and get inspired by it. And I think that we should. And I think if
Mhm.
we're going to start anywhere, you kind of can't start in the United States, because the United
that's
States
right.
doesn't have a real revolution.
Yeah,
That's right.
I
Yeah.
think
Go
I
ahead,
was
go
just to
ahead,
say I think even like in context of today, in what happened yesterday, it was like it was about no kings, and I think
Yes.
there's so much focus on like this one person. Let's say he was when he doesn't he gets out of office in 2028, and then are we going to kind of kick up our feet and think that was the revolution, or are we going to actually
Yep.
attack the systems this time and actually are we actually sparking a real revolution?
Yeah. Yeah. Are we actually going to get structural change? I
Hmm.
think that's what's really important. And who knows? I mean, I don't know. He's made it clear he may not step down. So I don't know
Come
what it's
on,
going
come
to look
on, come on.
like. I mean, I honestly think the only thing that's going to take this man out is death. Bro.
That's right.
I don't think we
But
can
he's
vote our
like,
way
but
out
he's
of
like
it.
a
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to vote our way out.
he's like a nuclear reactive cockroach. Like he's gonna be
Yo,
around till like he's like 200. Like he's just still
I'm
just
like,
squirming
how many
around.
lives does this man have? How many assassination attempts?
Come
Like,
on, just fail. How do you
wild.
fail upwards since birth? You just continue fail upward all the way from birth to death.
They're
Just
going to turn him
Yeah.
I
into
don't
an
know.
AI robot president, and he's going to
Yeah,
just be.
he'll be lording over us as an AI.
Yes.
But
Yes.
to your point of revolution, I said in my final speech as I was transitioning out of the Democratic Party chair here that a revolution means those at the bottom move to the top, and those at the top move to the bottom, like a complete revolution, right? Changing a system from
Mm.
top to bottom. And as I was hearing you speak, I was thinking about like how those of us Africans who are inside. We're Africans, but we're citizens of America, or we are, we are these people who are inside of the project of America, right? And I think about how we've always had this kind of extreme pragmatism as Black people. Like even when we were enslaved, like, okay, if I run away, I know that this, this slave master, he might, sell my wife or hurt my wife or hurt my children.
Yeah.
So like we have to have this kind of negotiation. Or like when 1864, when Abraham Lincoln had, Frederick Douglass and Black people into the White House, say, hey, y'all can leave and go back to Africa. Or we could, so, or it would have been McClellan would have been like, we'll have all y'all re-enslaved. It's like we've
Yeah.
always kind of had this politics of a kind of a, I hate to say it, like a slave politic, but like a captured politic. Kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
we have to be, because like our danger radar has always been extremely high because we've always had to survive it. And as we
Yeah.
talk about the adrenaline, the cortisol in our bodies, and how that's
Mm.
epigenetic over time, that also is a part of a revolution. It's like, and so when people, I'm
Mm.
seeing the stuff on Saturday, like you've never had to fight for anything. You've never
Mm.
had to fight for your humanity. This is why there's no organized strategy on what you actually want or demand, because you think this system within itself is still a good system.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That part, that to me, so I was not at a protest.
You weren't? Oh,
I
come on. I mean, the 92% wasn't the protest. Do y'all really care? I don't think y'all
I
really
Well,
care.
was I was not I was not there, and I have not been, in full disclosure, I have not been to a protest in a while. Maybe uh before 2020. It's been a minute. I
Right,
actually
right,
think
right,
the
right.
last one I vividly remember was when Trayvon Martin was killed.
mhm.
So
Mm,
when was that? That was
That
like
was
20
2016?
2011.
2014.
Yeah, it was
It's been a while. Part of that, to answer quickly, part of that is because when the major protests were happening in 2020, I had just had a baby, like literally just had a baby.
Right.
And my mother and my husband were like, you will not be
No
out in
way.
these streets. Like,
No
you
way.
will not. Like, you had a C-section, you're nursing, forget
Come
about
on.
it. And even though I wasn't going to take my daughter, but I wanted to take my son, and my husband was terrified that my son would go to a protest and that someone would say something to him or throw something at him, or that he would not be safe,
Right.
and that he would, and trying to experience something joyful, that it could be a bad event if it went sideways, and not to sort of make him susceptible to that. So I didn't. And then after that, when I started writing the book, I also just felt like we did all those protests. We had millions of people, the largest protest in modern history. And what did we get? We got
Mm.
some signs changed. We got some street names changed. We got some statues and flags came down. We got a new Aunt Jemima, like,
You're right.
but I'm
Uncle
like,
Ben's off the
we ain't
rice.
asked for
yes,
this,
We
huh?
got
yes. But
we,
I'm like, we didn't
we,
ask for this.
we got some
We didn't,
DEI.
Yeah,
we
for
didn't ask
4 years
for
we got
any of
DEI.
this. We said abolish the police. We need to
Right.
see
Very clear.
it very clear.
Abolish
And
ICE
it
too, by
just,
the way. We said that too
yeah.
back
And
then.
within 6 months, you had January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Within
Mm-hmm.
a few months after that, you had an anti-DEI, anti-CRT.
Mm-hmm.
You had all these, board, school board meetings that were just being taken over. And I was like, wow, that was fast. That was fast. And so none of the changes that I wanted to see occurred. And that's because I don't think that, okay, I'm gonna say something that sounds like sort of somewhat problematic, but like, I think that the powers that be, you call it the government or whatever, actually want people to protest because they know it's ineffective. Because they
Mm.
know that it will not, okay, y'all gonna rally, and then come Monday, status quo,
Mhm.
business as usual. I actually think what's more potent is what people are doing at Target.
That's
Like,
right.
the boycott works. A
Economic.
sustained boycott works. A strike works. You
That's
know what I
right.
mean? Like, there are certain tactics that I feel are much more effective, that hit people in their pockets,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mhm.
do more damage and accelerate change quicker than a protest. Like, I see a protest now as like this is gonna sound bad, but like a sporting event. You know
Mhm.
how, like, if you are cheering, I'm in Boston, you're cheering for the Red Sox. and you see all these people in Red Sox merch and gear, and you're like, hey, same team, you know, like, and you feel really good being around other fans, and it does something for the vibe, it does something for your spirit. I do think that protests can encourage you, and that they can be fun, and that they can be affirming, and that they can, you know, sort of inspire you in some ways. People can have funny posters, it can be very collective, like a football game, like a sporting event. But I don't want to just be a spectator.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
right.
want to just be a fan of progress. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. So
I want more than that.
yeah. So with you not joining in the protest, would you say what does resting mean to you? Because I don't feel like these people that are not going to the protests are actually just like doing nothing, right? So what does it mean? What does that mean for
Yeah,
you?
I mean, well, I will say this, and this may contradict myself, but
Mhm.
like, I'm very happy to see white people at the protests.
Mhm.
I'm very happy to see
Yes,
white
yes.
people.
I mean, the numbers are great,
But
and just imagine if it.
listen, I mean, if we could keep that
Right.
momentum, if we could turn that momentum into votes, like, I do feel like a lot of this is the work that white people have to do. It is not,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
Black people, especially Black women, 92%. We've been
Hello.
doing this work. We've been doing this work. So my cape is still in the closet. Like, I am not
Mm-hmm.
about to run out, you know, and do that hard work. But I will join a boycott. I will you know, think about, like, okay, what are ways that we can actually, like, push back on these companies that have withdrawn their support. I think the Target boycott is a really good one.
Well,
What is it? Jamal Bryant is doing another boycott of, I think
For
it's
Family
Family
Dollar, I
Dollar.
think.
Yeah,
mhm.
Family Dollar. I
Mm-hmm.
and
mean, I think we need to do more boycotts, you
and
know.
Mm-hmm.
and
But I also think,
your book itself is, I mean, that's a tool. That's actually huge,
thank you.
right?
I
Like
would
that's
like
a
to say that.
handbook. That's
I feel
huge.
like people don't always appreciate that, but I do think that, like, my skills and talents are in the classroom and at my desk, like writing. And that may sound like a cop out, but not
No,
everybody can write, not everybody can have a platform. And
that's
so for
right.
me, writing is my greatest tool. Like, and not just books, op-eds, articles, whatever can be made accessible to the public. I podcast a lot. I love podcasting. Um, I think those things matter. My classroom is like my court. You know,
Mm.
at Wellesley, I feel like I know I am teaching the next generation of women leaders. And that's major for
Mm.
me. Teaching at a women's
Mm-hmm.
college, empowering marginalized groups, making sure they get coined, making sure they become employers, making sure, like, who they hire, who they fire, what their you know, sort of methods of operating are. I'm deeply invested in that, like
I,
making sure that my students are good leaders.
yeah, I want to highlight like what you're saying, because to me that's the work within the community, and that's the stuff that actually makes change, impactful change, and potentially for generations to come. Whether it's, in the classroom, educating, mentoring the next generation of leaders, women leaders,
Hmm.
minorities, things where DEI have been attacked. We have to continue that work. So the things you're doing, I think, are amazing. And for the people listening, we always talk about, well, what's in your skill set, right? So, are you a
That's right.
marketer? Okay, figure out how you can help in that way.
Yes.
Are you a doctor, a lawyer?
Content.
Things
Yeah.
like
You're a
that.
content
So
creator. Yeah.
like, what's in your skill set? Like, it doesn't have mean you have to go out and be a politician and run for office, right?
No.
It doesn't mean that I have to go write a book.
If I could say, I mean, in fact, Kelly, when I first reached out to, I think it was around the time the Sinners had just came out, and the same way I felt at the end of Sinners, which again, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan are not out there, saying vote for this person or make sure you organize, have mutual aid, but the message that they wanted to resonate with a certain demographic of people to have a full meal, as Ryan Coogler says. I
Yes.
got that exact same feeling when I finally shut your book. I was
Mm,
like,
Oh, that's high praise. Thank you. That's
wow,
high
oh
praise.
my
it is.
gosh. I was like,
Because
and
Sinners
it was
was
it was
liberatory.
it was literally within like the same minute. Like it was like book shut, let me find her on Instagram and
Mm.
send her a message. Like it was like no break. I was like, because you know you got to move while the spirit's in. You got to
Yeah.
move while it's
Yeah.
hot, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like and and it took me a while to finish, not because I'm a slow reader, because I was kept going back over chapters. I was going back over my notes. I was going
Mm,
back over. I was lining that up with other books. I'm pulling this off the shelf and talking about something, like I'm
mm.
doing a bunch of other stuff with just the singular book. And
I
you
love
did that, right? So,
that.
if you don't mind, could you just tell the story? And I might be a little off here, but I don't know which was in the protection, or if maybe it's even in the intro, about I believe it was your grandmother or your grandmother's sister and the nail in the foot. Could you
Oh, yeah, that's in the introduction.
the
Yes,
introduction?
my
Could you
grandmother
tell that
Arnesta.
quick story?
Yes.
Yes.
My great grandmother Ernesto, when she was 9 years old, she stepped on a rusty nail,
Mm.
and she got her foot was deeply infected to the point where she was near death. I mean, we don't know. She might have had tetanus. We're not sure, but tetanus, if untreated, can lead to death. And so, my great great grandmother took her to the only white doctor she knew, which was a white man that lived on in a big house on the other side of town, and she pleaded with him to help her save her daughter. And the white doctor said, I will help her, but on one condition.
Mm,
Once I heal her, she has to come live in my home and work for my family for the rest of her life. And it's 1915, it's Alabama, and these were the options. It was like, die or be enslaved to my family for the rest of your life. And because Ernesto was her only daughter, her only child, she consented. And then
Mm.
my great 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 grandmother, whose name I just found out about 6 months ago, that her name
mm,
was Martha. Martha refused. Martha was born enslaved, and Martha said, "Oh no, like over my dead body." And she picks up Arnesta and she takes her home and she administers every natural remedy she has, and she
mm-hmm.
saves her granddaughter's life.
Mm.
And to me, when my mother told me that story, she told me that story to explain to me my great grandmother's limp, because she always walked with a limp. And it was a result of the remedy. Her life was spared, but she sort of had this disability.
Sure.
Um, and I couldn't get over a lot of things. I couldn't get over the doctor's proposal.
Right, right.
I
What?
couldn't get over her mother's consent, even though I understood it. She didn't want her to die. But for someone who I think was born into slavery, she was like, no, slavery's worse than death. You'd rather
Mm,
have her die than be enslaved.
Mm.
So the fact that she refused this white man and didn't just take her home to die, but came up with her own remedies, came up with her own medicines to save her life is just, I mean, that whole story
yes,
just
yes.
feels like a metaphor for how we might approach white supremacy today, which is to basically refuse it, to say,
Right.
like, oh, hell no. Like,
Mm.
but these cannot be the options. Death or slavery cannot be the options.
Mm,
And to sort of refuse that metaphorical fork in the road, which I write about. And so I use that story to really frame like the whole book, really, and to talk about to talk about what refusal means to me. The paperback of the book is coming out in November, and I
oh, okay.
added like a whole new paragraph in the paperback that comes at the very last chapter of the book. And because I had another conversation with my mom, in which
Mm,
she said, the limp, that was not the totality of Arnesta's life. She got
right.
married. She married 5
Mm,
times. She had a vibrant
mm.
personality. She threw parties all the time. She never knew a stranger. Like you might have noticed the limp when you first met her, but after that, you sort of forgot about like that and you just saw her spirit. And she just talked about how vibrant and joyful she was, and how I remind her a lot of her grandmother. And I just felt like I needed to put that in the book too. I needed to have a happier ending, or an ending that sort of said, hey, don't just think of this proposal and be upset. Arnesta lived. She had a
That's right.
full life. Let me tell you about that life too.
Mm.
Yeah, I think the following portion of, or section or sentence after that book was is this the limp was almost indicative of what it is to be black in America or something to that
Yeah.
effect. Where it's like it's almost like we the limp that we have, the maternal mortality rates, the school to prison pipeline. I mean, like it's we survive and thrive and exist, but it's almost to like they can't kill us enough. But it doesn't matter. We're gonna survive anyway. We're gonna thrive anyway. We're gonna build community anyway.
Yeah.
We're gonna create songs and music and dance and culture anyway. But
Yeah.
moving on, because I don't want to take too much of your time up. So to the next section about protection. You have a portion of the book, and I want you to kind of just give us a quick rundown of it where we're talking about infanticide, right? So
Mhm.
there's levels of like this may seem a bit crazy to some people, but as you understand like what protection actually means, to your point, how slavery is worse than death, and even
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman says slavery is worse than death.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that portion?
Oh
Because I think when people
man.
think of protection, they're like it has to be
Mm.
how we're colonized to believe what protection is, or is it about property
Yeah.
or material?
Protection is not just self-defense. I tell the story of Margaret Garner, famous story, enslaved woman who escaped slavery with her family and only enjoys freedom for a few hours before the slave catchers come in and they surround the cabin that they're hiding out in. And Margaret Garner makes the choice to kill her children, that she rather kill them than have them sent back into slavery. And she kills her youngest child. She tries to kill her second youngest child before the authorities break in. And it's such a grievous story. It is
Mm,
such a heartbreaking story.
hmm.
Um, and I had to really sit with it because I had to think about how Margaret Garner would have been perceived at the time as an unfit mother, as a monster. Who kills your children? But I really wanted to redeem her and her
Right.
motherhood and her love for her children and to say, no, what she did was a radical act of love, one that I'm not confident I could do myself. And that is to liberate her children through death.
Mm,
She understood how violent slavery was, how horrific slavery was. You know, when I tell people that Margaret was 19 with four children, I mean, and we don't know who the father of those children are. We suspect that her youngest daughter might have been her slave holders because she was born with blonde hair and blue eyes, and
mm.
that should tell you a lot about her circumstances. Sexual assault was rampant. It was rampant, and it was not considered illegal.
That's right.
And so I think protection can't just be looked at as oh, someone's coming for me, let me grab my gun. Protection is love. Protection is care. It's rooted in care. When I talk about the Black Panther Party, I say that the greatest thing that they put forth was actually protection in the form of love. That it was not just about like guns and shoot 'em
And
up, bang bang.
berets, right?
Like it
Leather
was the
jackets, right?
yes, yes, that's all performative, but like it was that breakfast,
That's right.
They made sure every kid had a hot breakfast. And for me, making sure that people are fed and healthy and literate, that is, I can think of no more
That's right.
protective.
That's right. Yeah, and the free health clinic as well, right? These are
Yes,
these are
they're free
things.
health clinics. They were a protective organization. And they
Yeah,
actually, I have to say this, they actually put the guns down about a year into their movement. They were like, oh, these guns are actually doing more harm than good. Let's just focus on these programs, these health programs, these literacy programs, these, safe, free breakfast programs. Like that's what really made them a jewel of the community.
yeah. I mean, because when you have black people that are well fed, well educated, and healthy, there is no bigger, pebble in the shoe to white supremacy than that. There
Yes,
is no bigger obstacle than having healthy, well educated, and taking care of children,
yes,
or, or
that's so
or or
true.
people. So I think that's why, of course, now we're saying this is why we don't have healthcare as a country. This is why we don't
Yes.
have school programs. Racism goes so deep. We had an activist on a few months ago. She was saying like why she's against, or why she is always talking out against white supremacy is because like those that eventually becomes law, right? That rhetoric becomes
Yeah.
law. If you say, well, it's the welfare queen, then that goes into the state house, that goes into, the
Yeah.
Congress, and they say, well, there's a bunch of, ne'er-do-wells who are just trying to mooch off the government because that rhetoric goes that far.
Yeah.
So when people say it always starts with
Yeah.
just the language, but it always kind of equates to the human condition.
And it
Uh,
harms white people. White supremacy harms
exactly.
white people. Like, white people are poor. White people are not fed and literate and not healthy, and these programs really were a blueprint for how not just Black people could get free, but the Black Panther Party was like, no, anybody who wants a meal,
That's right.
young Timmy, come on.
Hmm.
And that was what was really toxic, that people would rather, it's a book called Dying for Whiteness. People
Oh,
would rather
Jonathan Metzl. I
die.
love that book. I got
Yes.
it right over there. Yep, Dr.
Yes.
Jonathan Metzl. Come on now.
Yes.
Hmm.
They would rather die than give Black people equality.
Yeah.
I just think of
Yeah.
the intro of that book where he's talking to that guy named Trevor in Tennessee, and he
Mhm.
says, he's got the tube on his nose, and he says, man, Obamacare I think had just passed, or the Affordable Care Act had just passed. He said, wouldn't you want this expansion here in Tennessee? And what was his response? I don't want to pay for no Mexicans. And I
Mm,
think that illustrates so much what we're dealing with today.
yeah.
Um,
It's a
but
whole story.
moving on to force. Now, we're here in Union County, North Carolina. That is clearly, one of the gems of the chapter for myself. And that's what I was like, man, I was already into the book a lot. And then I was like, oh my gosh, she's writing about, 10 miles up the road from here. So you talk about Robert F. Williams and his wife, Mabel Williams,
Mhm.
the white supremacist structure of Monroe, North Carolina, where I mean, I've always been for years reminding people that 55% of the adult white population were card-carrying members of the Ku Klux Klan at that time that they ran Robert F. Williams off. But just the stakes of him being a truth teller and him trying to get people to be armed against a violent system that is still just as violent today. The rhetoric might have changed, the tactics might have changed. One, what made you choose Robert F. Williams, right? And this, I mean, me and my family, we just got back from DC. It was my first time going to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and I saw they had a whole little area for him, and I was like, oh my gosh! And this is
Yay.
all post that, so like, I just love to see that. But what made you choose Monroe and Robert and
I
Mabel
I
Williams?
love looking at people in history that are sort of unknown or
Hmm.
not well publicized. And I think, and this is no shade to like King and Rosa Parks, because I
Of
love them.
course,
They are like saints, but like they weren't the only ones. We
that's
make
right.
them as sort of like the figureheads of the movement, but a lot of people were doing a lot of this work and we don't know their names and we don't celebrate them. And Robert F. Williams was the president of his NAACP chapter.
Hmm.
um, Him and Mabel were like, the head leaders in their gun community. They were huge proponents of armed resistance and got other people to arm themselves and really stopped a lot of that violence that was taking place on behalf of the Klan. And basically, both of the Williams, they make the argument that like, yo, you're not gonna stop the Klan with like prayer. You need a
Come on,
pistol. You
come on.
need a pistol. You need to be
You get
armed.
you got to speak their language.
You have to speak their language, because when Klansmen realized that their lives were at risk when they played these games,
Mm,
that if a Black person came out in the porch with the rifle, with the pistol, with the shotgun, that they actually were cowards, that they actually were not, they wanted to terrorize Black people, but not at the risk of their own lives. And
hmm.
so being armed shut down a lot of those skirmishes when white people knew that like, oh no, that Negro right there, he's packing. Like, and I think we don't appreciate how much guns played a role in the civil rights movements. The
Hmm.
deacons of self-defense, they were always armed. King always had guns all in his house,
All through his house.
Yes, Rosa Parks talks about her kitchen table being covered with guns. Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, all of these people, they all carried guns. They all understood the ability to protect yourself. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I like a lot of my Black friends who are Southerners, they're like, of course we own guns. We just don't talk about it. But yeah, we
Right.
packing,
It's not the identity.
Right, right, right.
but in the North, and I've spent a lot of time in the North, people are like, oh no, we don't, we don't like,
It's
it's
improper.
very,
Oh no,
it's taboo. It's taboo,
right.
or it's talked about in hushed tones, and I
It's almost
recently
seen as like
got my
anti-intellectual
license.
almost.
Yes, almost, almost. And because of this book, I got my LTC. I got my license to carry
Mm.
in Massachusetts because I said, I can't have all these guns on the cover of my book. And not be informed, and not sort of like, what I wanted to do was not just be informed. I didn't want to be afraid. I
Right.
think that's really important. And so I took a gun safety class that was taught by a Black instructor.
Mm.
His name is Don Core. I love him. The whole class was Black people, and I would
There you
say
go.
maybe half women, half men.
Hmm.
There was one Asian guy and one Black woman, but that was it out of a class of like 40 so people.
Oh,
And
wow.
um, and it was so empowering because he talked about, gun safety and the laws and all of that. But the first thing he did was talked about how no Black community has ever sort of been destroyed that has been armed, that like armed protection
Mm.
saves people. But then he also said, but if someone steps on your shoe and you want to fight them, then you need to get healed first before you can own a gun. And he talked about
Mm.
the importance of getting yourself healed mentally
Oh,
and
wow.
emotionally before you even take this class. And he's like, and by the way, my wife leads healing classes, and
Oh, yeah, you know how we do. Yeah, well, by the way, right.
I loved it though, but it was very holistic. It's
Right.
not like we're not just gonna, shoot them up, bang bang. We care about you as a whole person. And so gun ownership is not just to be cool, that, you have to, that there's a deep respect for this, and there's a deep history to this. I loved it.
Yeah, no, and to your point, I had this line underlined from your book from Fannie Lou Hamer about keeping guns. She said, "I keep a shotgun in every corner of my bedroom, and the first cracker even looked like he wants to throw some dynamite on my porch. Won't write his mama again." Okay, so listen, Fannie Lou Hamer says she's sick and tired of being sick and tired, but also I'll put a hole in you. I'll
Mhm.
put a hole in you.
Yes.
You walk
Okay.
up in me. But yeah, fantastic. So moving on to the last two chapters, or last two sections here. Flight. You said your ancestors are from Alabama. So is mine. My grandmother came up during the Great Migration as well.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So and
Yeah,
I
Mississippi and Louisiana. I think my grandfather's family, some of his family's from Alabama, but mostly it's Louisiana and Mississippi.
okay, yeah. I mean, and I think that's the connection that we have about kind of almost this reverse migration that's happening, right? I get I'm from Pittsburgh, but I'm now in North
Yeah,
Carolina, right? And
yeah.
this is the
No, the
majority.
Pittsburgh, that's the train line. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
It is. It
Like
is. Yes,
straight
that's
up.
right. That's right. And I think as we think about where we're heavily indexed as Black people, it's still in the Southeast, right? The
Yeah.
the old slave states, right? And this is where our power should probably resonate and be able to, expand and be able to take that. So
Mhm.
talk about flight, right? We both have
Yeah.
ancestors that did that. The importance of flight, right? And beyond just
Leaving.
running. Because of course in the American Psychological Association it's flight, fight, or freeze, but flight for us has meant something different.
It has. And I think we underestimate just how much flight has played a part of our narrative. In the American Revolution, Black people are leaving. The British offer them freedom if they fight for them, and some of them do, but most Black
That's
people
right.
are like, Master's gone. I'm
I'm
getting out of
gone.
Dodge. I'm getting out. Yeah, same thing happens with the Civil War. Black folks leave the plantations in the droves. And during Reconstruction, after Reconstruction, and you got Plessy versus Ferguson, and you've got like a cemented Jim Crow South,
Hmm.
Black folks are like, "Ugh, we're out." And they go to Detroit, and they go to Chicago, and they go to New York, and they go to Boston, and they go to LA and Oakland, and all of these places that did not have large Black populations get massive influxes of Black people. Up until I would say 1970 is when it stops, and that's pretty much because the South catches up industrial wise with the
Right.
North. So the jobs and the wages there are more opportunities in the South. Um, but I've even seen a reverse in the 90s and the 2000s, where a lot of, my parents and their generation, they're moving back to the South. They want warmer weather. They want to be closer to their
Hmm.
ancestral lands. They want that connection. I've seen with this administration a lot of Black people, especially academics, that are like, I'm leaving. We going to France. We going to Ghana. We going to,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
Panama or Canada, or but the problem is, and I say this in the book too, that flight is the least effective of
Mm.
all the remedies. And
Mm.
that is because, one, not everybody has access to flight. Not
That's right.
everybody has a passport. Not everybody can leave. It's hard for people to go from urban to rural or rural to urban,
The
let
next
alone
city over, right?
yeah, you know what I mean? Like if you take a New York City girl and put her in Georgia, I
Sure.
don't know. You know what I mean? Unless she's in Atlanta. I don't
Right,
know.
right.
Like they're not it's not an easy thing to do. It's costly, it's
Hmm.
privileged.
Hmm.
And also, I think it doesn't require the space that you are in to change. It actually, in some ways, emboldens it to become worse. So, my colleague and I are writing an op-ed on this now about like what happens when academics and elites and wealthy people leave the country. It actually fortifies authoritarian regimes. So if you think
Mm,
about Nazi Germany and how like people like Albert Einstein left, all of these like scientists and physicists and writers and artists and politicians, they all left in the early 1930s. They got out of Dodge.
right.
Um, and while that served them well, it only made things worse in the place that they left. So violence got accelerated. You know, the terrorism against Jews accelerated. All of those things got worse for the people that couldn't leave.
Mm,
And the people that couldn't leave, we know what happens to them. They got
that's
thrown
right.
in concentration camps. They were killed. And so flight is more of an individual remedy than a collective one. But I don't dismiss it altogether because I still find usefulness in it when it can be mass
Mass
produced. Right?
migration, right,
Yes,
right. Hmm.
yes. And the Great Migration was millions of people. It wasn't just one or two families or like some celebrities with money, you know. And right now, I think what we're seeing are like celebrities, people with means, they'll leave. Most of us will not. Most of us cannot.
Mm.
I remember prior to the election, it's ironic that you know, uh, a lot of white people, that was one of their things. Like, if Trump wins, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, I'm out.
And to me, that was always kind of a weird like perspective. I'm like, this is a country that you stole by sword point, built on the backs of enslaved people, and carved in your own image.
Mm,
And now these systems that you created, because they were all without the three of us being considered, right? Having a presidency, a Congress and Senate, these state lines, arbitrary. None of that had Negroes. Hey, would y'all want this to be like this? Y'all didn't want any of that. But
yeah,
now, when those chickens are coming home to roost, I'm out of here. I can't take this. It's
yeah.
like,
It's like, what?
yeah, like what the hell's wrong? I
Yeah,
mean,
you should
What
feel
the
very
hell?
comfortable right now.
right? Like this is your whole situation. Like,
But also, can I say that, like, the other thing is anti-blackness is global. It
come
is
on now,
global. Like,
come on.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought about going to France because, you know, I
Hmm.
love France
Yeah, I
and
love
I
France,
always have
right?
a good time. Croissant, okay,
Come on
yeah,
now. Marmar, come on now. I love
yes.
Marmar. Come on now.
I went there. I was in there in March. Yeah, March. And
Hmm.
I met another Black woman professor in France. And we were talking. I was like, tell me about your experiences. And she said, oh, well, I have to teach all my classes on Zoom. And I
Mm.
said, because of like COVID or like what? And she goes,
Like this
no.
March in 2025.
Yes, March of 2025. Like I was
Okay.
like, I don't know why I said COVID, but I was like, COVID? And she was
Right,
like,
but still, no, it's like, yeah.
no. She said, no, because of what I work on, I get death threats. And so she works on racism in France. She's the leading scholar on race and racism in France.
Hmm.
And the French don't want to hear from her. And she wrote a book about France and slavery, and she has been targeted. And I said, girl, if you getting targeted, like, what are they gonna do to me with this on the cover? You know what I mean? Like,
Shoot the book, shoot the book.
yeah. I said, there's no chance for me if you have to teach on Zoom. So I say that to say there's no place that you can go, certainly not in Europe, but even some places on the continent where you will
That's right.
feel, because colonialism is there too,
That's
you
right.
know? Um, it's just hard.
Yeah, as Frantz Fanon said, colonialism is just a segmentation of humanity, putting us in
Yes,
different boxes, making a hierarchy, who's on top, who's on the bottom. Even with the
yes.
places like Liberia, right? Like the
Yeah,
idea that like we colonized that with black people on top who were recently enslaved. So it's a mindset, and I think what we're seeing right now, I say it all the time on this show, is the death rattle of white supremacy. And the thing
mm,
about the death rattle is what comes after that is assured death. So
yeah.
like that's what we're saying. And people say, "Oh, the world's ending." Like, no, the world's not ending. A world is ending.
Yo-ho! Oh,
it is up to us to imagine and build a better world for all of us, right?
yes.
So
Yes.
but yeah, so moving on to the final portion here, which was again, I think it was a I laughed at this chapter. I mean, when you're talking about frolicking, I forgot all about frolicking, Black Twitter. I'm like, man,
We frolicking.
joy.
We frolicking.
We frolicking. I mean, I forgot all about that until you put that in that book, man. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
And barbecue Becky and how even we take
yes.
moments of trauma and turn that into comedy and joy. Because we can't be serious. Negroes can't be serious
We
about nothing.
can't be
We
serious.
can't, man. I mean, the first stand-up comedian was black, right? The concept of a punchline came from a black man, right? So like
Yeah.
that is who we are. Gallows humor came from us, right? So um, we talked about it a little bit earlier about the concept of joy. But there was
Mm,
two lines in that chapter that I remember reading. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I ever talk to this person, these lines
mm,
they stick with me to this day. One was and it's a little bit off topic about joy, but it's within the chapter. But and maybe I'll go back and find it here for one second. But it was the concept of oh man, not a, I've been aces the whole interview, but now I'm like, okay, no,
it's all good. Take your time.
this
Take
one
your time.
portion. I'm like,
As
okay,
they say in
uh,
church, take your time.
take your time, baby. Well, it's really the concept of like how we derive positive, emotions in these pressures, right? And
Mm,
one thing I even told a white person this, it's from your book, but it was that white people get to be happy, and
mm,
black people get to experience
joy.
joy. Can you
Yeah.
expand on that, please?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that happiness is just so easy. It doesn't take much. It's like, oh, found $1. Hey, like it's very
Right, right.
it is very flippant. It's very, you stumble upon it like happenstance.
It's
It's very
transactional.
shallow because 2 minutes later, you could be angry, you could be mad, you could be sad. It's not deep at all, and it doesn't require anything of you. Um, and I think because of white privilege and because of the way that white supremacy works and because of how whiteness is so empowered, white people get to be happy a lot of the time. A lot of the time. A lot of
Hmm.
the pressures and the psychosis and the things that black people are going through constantly trying to pivot and protect and think 5 steps ahead. White people don't have to do that. There's such an ease with their like, it's just very superficial.
Hmm.
And I'm saying this very
Broad,
generalistically because
broad
there
Right.
are white
sure.
people that know joy, obviously, and there are black people that can be happy.
No
But I
question.
think joy really comes from a place of suffering.
That's right.
And in general, white people have not suffered
Hmm.
for sustained periods of time, right? And I'm
Right.
not talking about like,
Individually, yes, but
yes, I'm
collectively,
not
no.
talking about like
Correct.
the tornado that hits the town and devastates the town
No,
and nothing to
no.
be done, or the school shooting that takes place. Those things are real. I'm
Right.
talking about sustained, constant, persistent oppression and suffering.
Hmm.
Black people know that well. Other marginalized groups know that well. And
That's
so
right.
happiness will not be sufficient for them.
Right.
Um, but joy is.
Hmm.
Joy is tethered to grief. Joy is an aspect of sorrow.
Hmm.
That those ideas to me, I think there's a reason we talk about them within the framework of the church and especially the Black church.
Hmm.
Because that's what Negro spirituals were. You could say, well, slaves were happy because they were singing. No, they were singing because they were trying to affirm their own humanity, because they were trying
Mm.
to survive. And that song was a part of joy, but they weren't happy. Do you know what I mean? That song was trying to sustain them. And so I think we have to really tease out the differences in those concepts because they're not the same.
Mm.
I think that actually aligns with what we were just talking about earlier in the show. That like the No Kings protests and the energy there was more of a happy energy.
Mhm.
But then later that day, I went to the Juneteenth, celebration in Monroe, and what do we had? We had them fans out, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
one is joy, and one is
Yes.
happiness, right? Like the white people find happiness
Yes.
in just for those 2 hours. They're there with a bunch of disparate signs with no demands, but we're here, we're happy because I'm mad at Trump. It's like okay, cool.
Yes.
But then they go
Yes.
back to their segregated enclaves and they drive their
Because the
electric
game is over.
cars.
When the when the game is over and the fans are let out the stadium, and then
Right.
you go back to your 9 to 5 or whatever it is. But
Right.
um, Black people are never getting a chance to escape the reality of their oppression, and
That's right.
so you have to have more than that. And it's not a coincidence to me that you will see Black marches and like someone doing the electric slide or like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
somebody bringing a fan, or just like there's a different feeling, a sentiment of laughter that is like, we are laughing to keep from crying, because otherwise this is a funeral procession. I mean, when we were marching in
Mm.
2020, those marches were public displays of grief. We were
Mm.
talking about Sandra Bland, and we were talking about oh
Breonna
my gosh,
Taylor and George Floyd, Ahmaud
George
Arbery.
Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, like
Mhm.
Breonna Taylor. These are people who lost their lives. These were funerals.
Mm.
So, but if you've ever been to a Black funeral too,
You
there's
know we
weeping
get
and
down.
wailing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also joy and laughter. Um,
That's right.
and it's our heritage. It's who we are.
Yeah, no, and I found the second line, and this is a little bit, it's enjoy, but I remember when I heard this, it really, I think, illustrates our condition and the media and how we're perceived and how, again, we talk about how laws get created, but and again, it's a little bit off topic of joy if folks haven't read the book, but if you have read the book, it makes sense within the chapter. This is the quote. It's that white people commit crimes, but Black people are criminal.
Mm.
Yo,
Oh,
that's Khalil Muhammad.
a
Khalil
bar.
Muhammad, the condemnation of Blackness. Yes, that, can I tell you, that line, when I read Condemnation of Blackness, and Khalil Muhammad is a professor he was at Harvard. Now he left out of protest. Now he's at Princeton. But
Okay.
he said that line in a speech, and it's also in his book. But I said, if that is not everything, white people
Everything.
commit crimes, but Black people are criminals. Meaning, white people commit crimes, but that's not who they are. Tommy just made a
No.
bad decision.
Come on.
Boys will be boys. This is what they do. They're just excited their team won, or
Come
they're
on.
just sad their politician lost. But that's not who they are. But Black people are criminals, regardless of whether they've committed crimes or not. We perceive them as criminals. Your very existence is a crime. Like, and I just had to sit with that. And I really had to be like, that is the whole ball game. That
Whole
is
ball
how
game.
racism works. You will never be given a fair shake because you are a criminal.
And
Yeah,
that's
And
why you
white
can
people
and that's why you
never
can
commit
shoot and
crimes.
that's why you can shoot a Tamir Rice within 2 seconds in Ohio
oh,
because his mere existence with a toy gun threatens the idea
Yes.
of white comfort. Sorry,
right.
Ron.
And well, no, I'm sorry. And just right here in Monroe, was it 2 weeks ago? There was
Hmm.
somebody who shot a cop, and before we knew who it was, I was on Facebook, and there was people saying that he's a good kid. Like we knew
Already
him,
know.
and so then I brought it up on here. I was like, he's probably a white. He's probably white, and he was
Of
2 days
course.
later, and he
Who was
just
the
got through
kid?
murdering. He just got through murdering a black man before he shot the cop. Um,
Mm,
and if it was the
Good
other way
kid.
around,
Good
if it was the other way
kid.
listen,
around, it would have not been any of that
what
empathy,
was his
sympathy.
name? In Kenosha or Kankakee, or was it Milwaukee
Oh,
during 20?
yeah, yeah. The one that
He
went up there and
shot,
cried on at the court stand.
yes, and got off. I
You
said,
know that ugly cry face pay around. What's his name?
Who is this? I'm not.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle
Oh yeah,
Rittenhouse.
Cal, yes, yes. Oh
Yes,
God, yeah, yes.
yes,
That is the titular. I try to remind people when people talk about what is white privilege, and I'm like, white privilege is Kyle Rittenhouse. White privilege is Donald Trump. Privilege is Pete
yes,
Hegseth. White privilege is all these
Daniel
statues of
Penny.
Confederate generals. Daniel Penny.
yes,
And 'cause
yes,
I told Rom on this show, I said, Rom, these statues of these Confederate traitors. You know what it would take for us to get a statue, Kelly? We would have to build that damn statue ourselves.
yes,
Okay, that's what it would
yes.
take for us to get a statue.
Could you imagine if Obama was a felon? Could you
Oh,
imagine? You know what I mean? Like, there's no world in which he can exist
or
as a
No,
felon.
had multiple
he
baby
had to
mamas,
he
had
had to be
multiple
perfect.
wives, had a
He had to be
mistress.
perfect by a white standard. Went to Harvard, first president of the Harvard Law Review. Constitutional lawyer.
Yeah,
Polished black family, 2.5 kids,
yeah,
white and black dog. I mean,
yes,
everything was down the middle, right? And then it's still
yes,
like that damn tan suit makes him a terrorist. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but no, but I love the chapter joy we get into, and I thought it was so ironic because again, I just came out sinners, but you talk about our feeling during Black Panther is very similar to how
Mm,
we're all talking about sinners. Where like it was a
yeah.
cultural moment and like people were showing up, they stack and smoke shirts and we had all these think
Yes.
pieces about Annie versus Mary and what about
Yes.
Remick and how that works, blah blah blah. So like I thought that portion was like, oh my gosh.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then lastly, as and again we're way over time, but lastly, the last
It's
portion
okay. It's okay.
I also use this. So is the epilogue drowning, right? Um,
Yes.
I actually just used this line yesterday, ironically, about was it you becoming a lifeguard or is
My
that right?
husband. My
Your
husband was
husband.
a
Okay.
lifeguard. Yeah.
But the idea of let them, let them
Let
drown
them drown. Let them drown.
because it was
Mm.
about the Saturday protest, and they're like, well, black people aren't this, and why aren't the black people here, and the black people aren't the black people,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and I actually because I didn't, I mean, I was like out and about with my kids and doing at swimming actually at swimming class for my daughter, and I was writing back and forth with this person. I said, and I brought the whole story up that like certain people, or when you train to be a lifeguard, they teach you that some people they have throws in the water, and it's easier to let
Mm-hmm.
them drown and then go
Mm-hmm.
save them
Yep.
instead of
Resuscitate them later.
resuscitate them later instead of just diving in because they could eventually pull you under. That
Yeah.
concept, I think, is really indicative of this moment as well because there's this high threshold for us as Black people that we must
Mm-hmm.
be the protectors of all that. But as we just talked about, we're also these violent
Baywatch. We got to be lifeguard.
but we're also these violent criminals, right? Like it's this idea of like,
Yes.
you say we're dirty, but we clean your house. You say we're not good with
Yes.
kids, but we raise your kids. And anyway, it's
Yep.
this the hypocrisy of
The
white supremacy,
irony.
the irony of white supremacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking that concept of drowning or let them drown, how does that import to us in this moment, right? Like, because
Mm.
as we're talking about getting our rest, and I don't think rest means we're all sleeping. I think white people when they hear rest, it's very like textual and like the definition of rest is you're sleeping in the bed with a sheet on you. We're saying rest is okay. We're not doing the performative nonsense right now. We're not
Yeah.
doing the
No,
performative
we're
bullshit.
not. We're not.
So
And
this
there's
concept of drowning, can you just help us out with that?
yeah, there's two things I talk about, and I wish I could write like a sequel to this book or something. One,
Please do, please do.
when I when I give the like a public lecture of this talk, I show a picture of MLK and he's in Jamaica and he's like on the beach and he's in the pool, he's shirtless, he's swimming. And I love it because people haven't seen pictures of MLK shirtless, let alone
Right.
in the pool. You know what I mean? He's
Mm-hmm.
lounging, he's
Mm-hmm.
walking on the beach with Coretta. It's beautiful pictures. But I'm like, if King could take a break, if he
Mm.
could get rest, like we only see him marching and being arrested and all this stuff, and it's like,
The
no,
mug
he
shots.
needed to take a break. You know what I mean? Like he needed a vacation and he took it. That to me is a motto. It's like, listen, if God rested on the seventh day, we need rest. Rest
Hello.
has to be a part of the activism. And then the second part of that is that sometimes when I give that, I end my talk with the let them drown. And I think people misinterpret it because they're like, she's saying let them die. No, I'm not.
Mm-mm.
I think letting someone drown is not a no, I'm not going to save you. It's I won't save you right now. Like I
Mm.
won't it's a delay. And the
Mm.
delay is protective because when you're flailing and you're splashing and you're kicking and you are panicking, um you are irrational and even more importantly, you are dangerous. You are
Mm.
dangerous to the person who is trying to rescue you. The lifeguard actually can't put themselves at risk to save your life. Two people will die. And so lifeguards have to be strategic. They have to size up the person. They have to look at, like, okay, well, are they tired? Are they weak? Are they just on the precipice of unconsciousness? Okay, now I'm gonna swim out to you. Now I'm
Right.
gonna give you the buoy. And now maybe we'll see if the CPR and this near life death experience will bring you some clarity and make you straighten up.
Yeah.
But
I
Black people are going to be strategic. They are not going to jump in the waters for every white person that,
Come on. Come on.
that does crazy things. You know what I mean?
Come
It
on.
doesn't make sense. And a lot of the people that are drowning, and I say this in the book, are in a pool where they could just stand up. You know
Come
what I mean?
on. Come
Like,
on
you're
now.
not in the ocean. You're surrounded
Mm-mm.
by floaties. It's only 3 feet. Stand up. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
Like my job is not keeping you from getting a job. My kid's education doesn't take away from your kid's education. My
Mm-hmm.
ability to float doesn't make you sink. Like,
Mm-hmm.
stand up.
Yeah, I think
But
yeah, I think it's been if among Black people, I think it's been a collective and intentional strategy, and maybe even unintentional, but instinctual, right? Because
yes.
and I'm finding that I think it's working in a way, right? And these people are going out building their chops and kind of figuring out how to do it without Black people on the front lines. George Floyd protests, they were leading that. And I don't think that it should take a Black person getting gunned down and killed in a vicious
Mm,
manner for people to go out and to do these protests and mobilize. But yeah, I mean, I think the next step is, and hopefully we'll continue to see that, is like this incremental, like, well, what happens after that, especially for the folks that aren't really like haven't been involved historically. They just vote and then that's it. But like, what's the next step? And
yeah.
like, so now they go to a protest and they're feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
Kind of what's that next step? But I do feel like at first they're like, well, where's the Black people? Why aren't they protesting?
We
But
got 3.5 more years of this
Come
administration.
on.
yeah,
Three and a half more years.
and I
Come
think
on.
Like,
but I think, yeah, listening, like, reading your book or listening to Black podcasters or other people who are in the community, because I went to State of the People in Durham like about a month ago, and it was a lot of Black organizers, and they might not be protesting, but they sure as hell aren't resting,
That's
right?
right.
And so there are other tools, to do and to actually help the community and enable community, and that's what I hope is kind of the next step for a lot of the newcomers, right? A lot of the new people, because we know
yeah.
that this protest yesterday had more, I think, double than 2 months ago, right? So now there's building momentum. Okay, now if we can just figure out, like, and point to it, and I think there's, we could talk about that later, but kind
No,
of
but
just a
you mentioned it
retrospective.
earlier, I think at the top of our conversation, which I think is so important, is like, who is out there registering people to vote? Who is out? You've got millions of people or thousands of people showing up, depending on the city or the town.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can't just be a parade. Like,
And
where's the paperwork?
and
Where's the
interesting.
policy?
And interestingly enough,
Where are the what are the
I
demands?
don't
And if,
think
and those,
What are
if
the
those demands
demands?
aren't met, then what y'all
yeah,
gonna do?
and I don't think in Waxhaw or Monroe yesterday that I saw anyone registering to people to vote. At the Juneteenth in Monroe, there was actually the Union County
There
Board of
was.
Elections registering people
Mm-hmm.
to vote, which is actually nonpartisan, right? And so
Led by a Black woman. I know her
there's
very
missed
well.
opportunity. But at the Latin Fest last week, the Union County Democrats had a booth. So like, I think that there's some missed opportunities, and like I said, a retrospective of like, okay, what happened yesterday? Well, what do we do to improve it, or like what can be done to improve it? Because there was
Yeah.
one booth in Monroe, the Renaissance Project. He's got like a binder, this group, but they actually have a plan, right? But there's other ways, there's other groups I think that could have taken advantage and been out there, and I know other cities did different things. But to me, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that was a missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I would love to see, listen, midterms are coming up, like it's not just about every 4 years.
That's
Midterms are
right.
coming up. There's a lot of
We got to.
local initiatives on the ballot. Like, it can't just be a one and done kind of
Right.
thing. It has to be ongoing. When I see more of that, and I'm seeing some of that, but when I see more of that, I think I will feel a little bit more encouraged. Um, I'm not skeptic. I don't really find value in too much skepticism. Like, I'm not a pessimist.
No.
But I do think that, like, I just want to see more people moving beyond the protest. I would love to have seen those numbers boycotting Amazon,
I'm
boycotting.
sure. I'm sure they're all still using Amazon. Still going to Target. Still. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
problem. It's like they can't extrapolate or they can't extricate the idea of the capitalism is also part of racism. It's also part of colonialism, and the imperialism is the end stage of capitalism, right? So,
yeah,
um, yeah, no, I know we're way over time, but one thing that I always try to remind people is that this we live in a country that demands Black excellence but accepts white mediocrity every single day. And I
Mm.
think that really rounds out our whole conversation of what refusal looks like, because at a certain point when we were trying to like y'all set the standard, right? Like y'all said you have to go get this degree, go get a master's degree, go get a doctorate, go get a law degree. And then we did that. Now you're like, oh, that's not good enough. Now you're a DEI hire. Now you're this, now you're that. So now, like, we're at a point where people are like, you know what? Y'all got it. So, Dr. Kellie Carter Jackson, is there any final words you want to give our listeners? It was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. Read the book, but is there
Thank
any final
you.
words you want to give our listeners?
First I want to say happy Father's Day. I don't think I said that at the top. So happy Father's
Thank
Day
you,
to you
thank you,
guys.
It's
thank
all
you.
right. I clocked it. I see how you are, sis. No, it's all good. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
That I think that's really important. I think especially Black fathers, they matter so much. I would say what I write in every single person's book that I sign, which is two things. It is keep refusing and seek joy. I think
Mm,
those are really important. We got to keep refusing and remember that joy is a part of that too. This doesn't have, this work should not take our lives, right? We shouldn't
mm.
be dying at 59. We have to find ways to thrive and keep pushing.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, folks, this is Dr. Kellie Carter Jackson. I know she doesn't like being called Dr. Kellie Carter Jackson, but I'm gonna do it right now because we respect the sister. And I'm sure you're aware of Dr. Greg Carr.
Yes.
I love Dr. Greg Carr. I mean, I follow a
Love.
lot of this stuff. I mean, of Africana Studies. So I'm sure you guys
I
probably
went to Howard, so you
Oh,
already
there you
know.
go. So I mean, he's always gonna come on, y'all. So but I love him. So, but I just want to just say that connection. I think that's who we are. The ancestors don't miss, right? Black folks
Yes.
don't miss. We're always in community and network. And I thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday evening to talk to us. And it was so impactful. I appreciate you so much, sister. I love you so much. And
Thank
I can't
you.
wait for the paperback edition to be released in November. I will be getting it.
Yes.
And hopefully we talk to you again sometime.
Thank you
Yes, thank
guys.
you for
Love you back.
coming. That
Be
was
well.
great listening to you, and I look forward to reading the book myself. All right, take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. All
All right.
right. Folks, that was Dr. Kellie Carter Jackson, the author of the book We Refuse, A Forceful History of Black Resistance. Oh my gosh, we're not there we go. Ram, what did you think about the conversation with Kellie?
I thought it was great. I can't wait to read it or listen to it. But
Because niggas be busy.
I like how you flow through that and made it easy to follow kind of the chapters. And I looked a little bit into it before this conversation, but I haven't read the book. So I think it's very relevant to what we're going through, and I don't think it sounds like it's a book in context of Black resistance, but I am sure it is a handbook, a tool for resistance in general.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of cultural stuff that I think, to her point, like if you don't have the cultural, understanding of kind of who you are, or if these systems were kind of built for you, you really wouldn't understand it. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure she has white people that read the book. Like, same way white people read 1619 Project,
mhm.
or read Cast, or read, the Sum of Us, whatever the case may be. But like, I think for us, it's like these are like, again, kind of like Sinners. Like
Sinners, yeah,
Sinners was like Sinners is not a
it's a
movie just
different
for black
experience,
people,
but yeah.
but like if you know what it's like to, you know, I remember the first episode of our old podcast. It was called the Magneto Effect. It was the title, and it was like how when you're in an aisle at the grocery store and a white person's walking, they expect you to kind of move to the side, right?
Hmm.
Like, and it's like kind of like the Magneto Effect. Like there's this orb of magnetism that is always projecting your black ass away from them, and then we are also indoctrinated into believing that we should turn to the side, or we teach our kids, come this way. There's a white person just walking garishly down the thing. And I think this book is really saying like we don't have to do that anymore.
Hmm.
And we should have never had to have done that
Hmm.
from jump. So yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation. I read a couple of chapters to prepare for the conversation, and I found myself enjoying it all over again. But we did have two stories. I do just want to touch on because it's
Mhm.
kind of news. But go ahead. Sorry, Ron.
No, I was gonna say I have a couple of local stories after we can talk about at the end too.
You want to
So
start with that? Yeah, go ahead. Start with that. What you got?
well, I did want to just, to also touch on a little bit about the protests over the weekend, and kind of had a retrospective with myself and trying to like see, well, what is the additional things that could have been done better collectively and individually. And as you know, I'm like, we want to get rid of Mayor Burns, right? And towards the end, another protester, she started speaking on Mayor Burns and educating people, and which is good, but it was like, I mean, most people had left, and I was like, man, like that would have been a
Mm,
great opportunity to
mm,
tell people, hey, this is bring more awareness to that and things like that. So, I think, for I don't know when the next protest will be, but there's definitely a lot of things that I think that can be improved just in a small town like Monroe, right? To get people registered to vote, to, make these candidates, people who are planning to run for office, they should be out there, shaking hands, kissing babies, bringing awareness to what Mayor Burns has done in the past, and what he's actually did last week, or pretty recently, and it was found out last week. So that's another topic, real quick. For those that
yeah.
don't know, he basically, it's believed that he did it, but snuck in Monroe into House Bill 3. And essentially, what that is basically saying that Monroe, among other cities in North Carolina who's on this list, would now become partisan elections, which means that there would have to be a primary before the election in November, which gives an extremely short period of time for candidates to prepare. Also means that you have to be registered as a Democrat or Republican to vote in the primary. So all of these other things and these factors. So there was, I think, 3 council members last week who had a press conference, and Julie Thompson, she's I think she identifies as a Republican. Saluda Anthony, who's one of the Democrats on that council, and I believe Franco McGee was there too. But essentially, they're like, this is bullshit. So now they have,
This is bovine scatology,
yes. So
as she
they
says. As well.
so they now have a meeting planned for tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and they will talk about House Bill 3. Very sneaky. Again, I also went to the city council meeting just this past Tuesday, and told Mayor Robert Burns to his face that either you're dishonest or you're incompetent. And then it
Or
turns out
both.
that it's both, right? And so as I'm
Right.
talking, as an example, he gave me an example as I'm talking. You get 2 minutes. If you have somebody co-sign for you, you can get an extra minute. I had that. He cut me off at 2 minutes. I said I had 3, and he argued. He said, "No, you don't. Got an attitude, copped an attitude." I look back. I'm like, I got to sign up. I had somebody sign up. He said, "You need 3 people," and I said, I looked at the city attorney, and he's like, "You just need 2." Said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. You're right. Go ahead." And I said, "That's what I mean. You're incompetent." Like, so he doesn't know the rules, all this shit. And so here he is being sneaky.
Yeah.
And then, one other thing that happened this weekend was, and I'm going to touch on this and let you get to your story. I actually don't know what your stories are. I might have
No, you're good.
glanced over them, but there was the shooting of two families in Minnesota, would essentially were two.
Can we go
Yeah, you
back to
said
the? I just want to go. Just want to
mhm,
just touch on the Burns thing.
mhm,
I think this is a really good example of how, because everybody's saying, "Oh, Burns did this." I'm like, well, I think this is a bigger example, or illustrates how this is. It is a conspiracy. Conspiracy, definitionally meaning people working together in a clandestine manner,
mhm.
where the general population does not understand. Because he's worked with folks that are his allies at the General Assembly.
Republicans, right?
Right, oh, yeah,
The
the
GOP, yeah,
Democrats are not his allies, right? So like
right.
the white man's party,
Yeah, he
right? The
didn't think of
party
this.
that's
He didn't think of
no,
this. Like,
no, right? Because there's other cities that are also very much in the exact same hot bed like how Monroe is,
mhm,
trying to consolidate and minimize power in the hands of the few. So again, I think that it's almost like the Trumpification of it. We're focused. It's the no kings, like
sure,
Burns did this, and it's like
yep.
no, 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 no,
It's
no,
just,
no.
yep,
This is a project that he is a willful participant in, just like Trump is a willful participant in the same white supremacist project. So I just want to make sure we're not exceptionalizing
That's an excellent point.
Burns,
Excellent
because
point.
it allows us to just do this, and it's like, dude, it's bigger than him. Because if he goes away, this is why people are like, because if you put on him, we forget that 970 people in Monroe chose to vote for him, right? People choose to give power to people like this. And if we're just putting it on Burns, we're not having this conversation with our neighbors. We're not having this conversation with our family members. We're not having this conversation with our coworkers. We're just trying to put it on Mayor Burns as if all evilness and duplicativeness is resides within him, and that is not the case. People they're among us, as the movie was called. They're among us. So I just wanted to just make that point.
No, that's absolutely an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, because he's part of a Christian nationalist movement, um,
White
white
Christian
Christian
nationalists.
nationalist
Say all three
movement,
words,
and
y'all.
he
Don't let them get you scared.
and uh, and to that point, kind of segue into the next topic really quick. There
Yeah,
was
no,
this
yeah.
shooting in Minnesota.
Hmm.
A senator and a state representative, and state senator, both were shot, as were I believe, their spouses.
Yes.
Two of them passed away.
Hmm.
The other two, I believe, came out of surgery and are recovering.
Hmm.
Very tragic. Thankfully, the two are recovering. But Mayor Robert Burns immediately went to politicize, in the
Hmm.
worst way. And here's what he had to say. And now leftists kill a Minnesota state rep and her husband and injure a senator and his wife. The alleged shooter of the representative had no Kings flyers in his car and was an appointee of Tim Walz. If you're a registered Democrat and are seeing how radical your party has become, the GOP will gladly accept your re-registration to join the party of patriots fighting for our country. So, if you caught up,
Fuck Mayor Burns. I can't say. I know if I went to the podium, I couldn't say that. That's the main reason I
you
don't go
might just you might last
because
time, but it might be worth.
because if I went up there, all right, right, so yeah, right, you get a one shot. It's like, motherfuck you,
Right
man.
before the buzzer.
Like, right, I'm never coming back again. But I just wanted to just say that because all this stuff has been easily debunked. And he is nothing but a small man. And I say this all the time about the Republican organization. I don't call them the Republican Party, I call them the Republican organization, because a party is a party that represents people and has policy goals, is supposed to be benefits. It is a dime store front for a white Christian nationalist organization. Just that was just an aside I needed to say. But what he is indicative of is of there's so many, and the vast majority of white men that are so submissive, just submissive men to Donald Trump, submissive men. I will give Trump that he elicits a reaction from them that is that makes them feel like, yes, daddy, whatever you want, yes, daddy. I'll wear your brooch. You're
Yeah, he's got a
a
Trump
Trump,
logo.
like, what I mean. So it's like these are such submissive
Small.
men, and
Yeah.
they call themselves alpha bros and the second man. You are the epitome of a submissive reek. I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Um,
Greek. Yeah. Yeah.
reek. I mean, y'all are reek.
All
You
of them.
are a submissive, afraid of.
All of them.
That is you, all of y'all, and that is not even afraid, but
Yeah.
willful bootlickers, willful. I will, sir, whatever you. Yes,
Look
sir.
at
Can I
Marco
have enough?
Rubio. Look at Marco
Marco
Rubio. He
little
looks so
Marco,
sad. Oh God. Ugh.
little Marco, right? All
Lindsey
these
Graham.
people.
But yes.
But on our level, like Robert Burns
Oh
is
yeah.
a great example of just what it means to be just a submissive reek.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to touch, because I think these things, like locally, this shit's been crazy. The other thing that happened at the council meeting was this Michelle Ball, she talks about it. She basically said, "Oh, we need
Friend
to
of the
check.
show.
We need to check. We need to check all your phones, the FOIA requests,
Oh, that was
check it for
wild.
child porn." And Julie Thompson, like, all right, point of order, whatever. Da da da
She was
da.
hot.
And these people just come out
Rightfully.
here, yeah. So she just accused the whole council, and then she, like, basically, whatever, all this happened. But they keep doing this every week, every month. They come up with the same thing. They keep talking about protecting children. They're talking about drag shows. It's the same old story. And, somebody behind me, and I said, it sounds like projection to me. You know what
That's
happened in
right.
South Carolina this week? They got their own little Mayor Burns looking feller. And
Mm-hmm.
he is this white. He's this white Christian nationalist. Same
No, he's a
story.
liberal.
And
He's a leftist.
but he's been distributing child like pretty nasty stuff. Young children. He has children of this age. But he literally, I mean, he looks like Mayor Robert Burns, but they're part of the same organizations, the same whole thing, and
Right.
so here we are talking shit. To your point about
No, Rom. He voted for Joe Brandon. He voted for Joe Brandon in 2020.
yeah, that's how they'll excuse everything. And then one other thing happened here. So, and I just want to touch on this too as an example of these small men. And I'm gonna put it out there. But like, what's up, Waxhaw's Facebook group? And here's
Mm-hmm,
this. They're
mm-hmm.
talking about the protest, and they're think like we're gonna be if they come rioting in the streets or running in the streets and da 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 da, and don't bring those rioters and looters in here. And the mayor of Waxhaw is saying like, like it's coming to our town, and da da da. So, anyways, there's this person on here, and somebody else was decided to plug his business as he's being a violent dick.
As one
And
does, as one does.
he said, I get kind of jealous when I see all these fine people getting paid to run over communists. I am glad it is coming to our convenient little town with one road in and out. Aiming won't be an issue. So
Mm.
they were
He
having
thought that shit was a bar too. He was like, "Ooh, got him,
yeah.
got him."
So he had a booth. He was having a booth that she was plugging at this outdoor market on Saturday mornings that I was stopping by on the way to
Yeah, how did you find this guy like in real
to
life? Like,
she was plugging the market because I knew about this market because my mom had actually told me about it the day before,
okay.
and then she was plugging his business as he's doing this, and so I was like, okay. So as I
Oh.
stopped by, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stop by his booth. I stopped by his booth. I said I had on my Radical Roots podcast, the one you have on the shirt, and I said, can you make this because he's got a little woodworking business, right? And I said,
I
can
bet he
you
does got some woodworking for
yeah,
Trump.
and so and I'm going to tell you what it's called, so y'all know. It's called patent crafting, and it's in Waxhaw. So stay away
So
from
so
package. But
do not use patent crafting and wax off.
yeah, and so they do lasering. I said, show him the logo. He said, yeah, I could do it. And I said, okay, tell me about it. And I said, well, this is nice and all, but it would have been really nice if you weren't threatening to mow people down, protesters,
Mm,
in the middle of the street. And he said, oh,
get him.
and he said, and he's like, he started back, and I didn't go there, like, I didn't say it on like some in your face,
But
I'm trying
again,
to start some shit, but on some like,
but what did we just talk about? White people commit crimes, black people are criminals. So just your very presence is like, oh, this scary big black
but
man. Oh,
but then he backed down. He said, oh, it's just a joke.
just a
He said,
joke.
it's talked about, oh, it's just a joke, and then it's meant to be taken
Take a
seriously. And
joke.
I said, look, you see what's happening. I said, did you know that the two politicians were
Right.
shot this morning in Minnesota? He said, no, no, what
Mm-hmm.
was that about? I showed him the
Oh,
story. I said, there's two Democrats that were shot. And then I said, look, there's people out there going to be protesting. I know the type of demographic, the type of demographic that's here in Waxhaw. You know the type of demographic that's in Monroe. You know it's going to be a
mm-hmm.
lot of older folks, older white women,
Mm-hmm.
older folks in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you actually scare people. Like, that scares people that are out there who are literally just protesting. They're not threatening violence. And he said, oh, I didn't mean to scare people. And he said, he fell back, and he fell back quite significantly. But like, these people think they can go on the internet and say whatever the fuck they want, and then there's
Right.
no there probably is no repercussion. But you have to. I wanted to remind them that like, this is real life,
I don't know,
right?
man. Like, hold on. Like, if you or I wrote this fucking thing here, like, you think the sheriff ain't gonna come knock on your motherfucking door? Or you think
If you and I
come
wrote it,
on.
that's a good
But
point.
this is but this
That's
is
exactly what we're talking about.
this is the irony to our whole conversation we had with Kelly. Like, this is the irony of a white supremacist system. And the idea that Kyle Rittenhouse can cry, but his tears don't matter as much as black blood. Like, this is the shit. And this is also like the consistent infantilization of white supremacy I was talking about, where white men get to always be just completely ignorant and joking. I like Trump because Trump tells it how it is, but then he says some vile shit. He was just joking. So what is it? You support him because he's telling the truth or because he's always fucking lying? Like, it can't be both. But that's why they like Trump, because they see themselves in him, because he exudes the same sort of rationale and like behavioral patterns that mimics them and their deepest, darkest desires. So that's why they like Trump. And we have to be honest about that. So that when people tell us that we are not, siding with them or understand. I don't got to go talk to the Klan to get both sides. If one side is saying, I'm not being treated like a human, why do I have to listen to the other side that is actively not treating them like a human?
Mm-hmm.
That is the question that we must be asking ourselves in this society, but we're not. We're so busy trying. I mean, I think we've been indoctrinated to this idea of both sides and everything and false equivocation, and we must jettison that from our minds, our society, and our culture.
Yep. But what stories do you have for us today?
Well, that was it. Yeah, the Minnesota stuff, because I'm like, well, like, what does that mean for like our society, right? I mean, Jolly Good Ginger, has that, I think, that amazing tweet that you put up a couple weeks ago of like the number one threat to the country is always going to be white supremacy. And until those are who are on our ostensible allies can not only say that shit, but also get in mode and be hip to hip to dismantle that shit. Because if not, as I said about Neely Fuller when he died in February, if you do not understand white supremacy and how it works, everything that you think you understand will only confuse you, is the quote. And so, like, that is the type of shit, like, when people are like, oh, no, Payron, don't be so divisive. It's like, listen, man, we must listen to those who are closest to death, harm, and injury. In this society, that is black people. In this society, it is indigenous people. In this society, it is Latino people. In this society, it is trans people. It is gay people. It is women. And if we are just trying to cozy up to folks like a Robert Burns because he has power. In fact, there's someone I got into it with locally. Not really got into it with, but she's kind of a local provocateur, if you will. But she's a black woman, and she's big on like, I kind of have this kind of middle of the road perspective, and I do see myself kind of being in relationship with or intimate with, not in that way, but like with Robert Burns, because he's helped me get some programs there. And I've seen this kind of here locally, right, a few times. The leader of the NAACP, I went with him to a meeting last year about the fluoride being taken out of the water on the east side of Union County, where it's predominantly more black and brown people. And it's just this idea of like the individualization, because when he walked up to the podium, they said his name. And and he kind of has kind of like a little pep in his step, like, well, they know my name. And I remember afterwards, the first thing he said to me was like, do you notice how they said my name? And I'll never forget this moment. Because I was like, I don't give a fuck if they know your fucking name. Like, we have to get past that as a people, that we can have interpersonal relationships, but people can cause systemic harm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Because a lot of people, they like to invest in this idea of like, well, I know Mayor Burns. And if Mayor Burns knows me, he picks up my phone call, but yet he still does things that can lead to death and dismemberment of your community. Who gives a shit? You must not have that good of a relationship that he's still going to vote for this. Or going back to that city councilman, they still voted to take the water out of the eastern part of Union County. So we have to ask ourselves, of these people, especially usually the middle class black people who have something to lose, as the black bourgeoisie, if you will, who still uphold an idea of capitalism, and usually that also the tenets of white supremacy, how that can be dangerous to the collective, because you are now saying that your interpersonal relationships trumps, for lack of better words, our collective well-being.
Yep, absolutely. So I think we should round it out.
Yeah, no, that was good, man. That was a good chat. Yeah, sorry.
No, don't be. I love it. There, you mind if I close out on the video that from Don Lemon, and just kind of I want to leave a lesson at the end.
The one that I posted, the one that I took from you and posted.
Yeah, that one.
So can I give a little context to it before?
Yeah,
is that okay?
absolutely.
And then we kind of go out on it.
Mm-hmm.
So Rom sent the production team this video, and I hadn't seen it until Rom sent it, and it made me have a visceral reaction to it, because there's a white woman, you'll hear her speak, and she's 100% correct, 100% correct with everything you're about to hear. What really impacted me, what's her name? Jennifer Welch, is that right?
Jennifer Welch, yes.
And I think she's on the podcast, I'm sick of this, or something like that, or like tired of this.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And I mean, I've never listened to the podcast, but all the clips are bangers. But everything she says is the facts about white people and what they need to do and blah, blah, blah. And when I watched this clip, it was almost instantaneous, very similar to how when I finished We Refuse, I reached out to Kelly. Almost as soon as I finished this video, I posted it on Facebook. And I wrote that I remember my final months as being in the chair of the Union County Dems. I told my board that, this is post-election now, right? Trump had won. The numbers were in of demographic breakdowns. And I also remember my experiences being the first black chair, the first black male chair, first black chair, period, but first black male chair. And I had said these things, and it was met with Peyron's being divisive. Peyron is toxic. Peyron is creating a non-inclusive environment. I mean, if anybody knows me, it's so insane to me. And even to the point, like they went and Karened on me up to our regional organizing director and said these things to her, who is a white girl who is queer that has a trans significant other, so she kind of understands marginalization. And I remember when she called me, she was like, "Peyron, I picked up on every single microaggression that white woman said." So it hurt me because it's like they will eat this shit up. White women will eat. They will eat this. Oh, she's right. We right. We gotta do better. But America, white America specifically, has a problem with accepting uh, leadership and recommendations and kind of guidance from people that they've been conditioned to believe are stupid, are duplicitous, are violent, that have a ulterior motive, that really don't know what we're talking about. And in reality, they don't even know themselves. So what you're going to hear from Jennifer Welch is some of the exact, I mean, to the T stuff I was saying, but they got two people on my board to quit on me. And at this point, like, whatever, like, look, I'm not part of the organizing structure of Democratic Party of Union County anymore. I'm just telling y'all the truth. And the one thing about Payron Baxter that I always tell anybody is that you may not like me, you may not like what I say, but you can never say that I lied to you. And if you can start from that point that this man has never lied to me and then pull back why you don't like me, you might realize it ain't me. It's something in yourself that you don't want to deal with. It's something that you know that you have to do the work and fight through yourself and process to get to the other side of that obstacle. But I've never lied to anybody. It's almost like, and I'm again not calling myself Malcolm X, but we talked about Malcolm X during around his birthday of May 19th, with Ozzie Davis's eulogy about him. Did you ever hear Brother Malcolm say anything that was mean? Did you ever hear Brother Malcolm say anything that was hurtful or hateful? You didn't. And this moment just really struck me because I was like, damn, like I said this same shit. So what's the difference? You have a blonde white woman saying the same shit that a young black guy with locks is saying, but what is the difference?
Yeah. Before we get into it's like now if I remember another story from earlier this week, not a story, but interaction I had, and Galif also kind of goes into this, is like there was a man, he shows up at the council meetings, forget his name, bald white man. He's a Republican, Wayne, and he said I listened to I listened to the podcast, and because I mentioned it to him before, and he said I don't agree with it, but I listened to it. And he said, why do y'all hate white people? I said, like, what did you hear? What did you hear that made you think we hate white people?
The thing is, why should we love white people? That's the thing. It's like when they say stupid shit like that, why should we love white people?
And so I said, well, what have I ever said? What have we ever said? Well, of course I don't hate white people. So like, and of course you're Republican. But I sat there and have a conversation with a candid conversation. And, I think, again, these people have these like preconceived notions, and I don't think it's my job to enlighten the ignorant, but here I am, or comfort them. But here I am, enlightening the ignorant twice this week, right? And if I can get exactly, and if I can do that, then you can talk to your husband, you can talk to your your friend, your cousin, because every time I've talked to so many people, and they're like, right. Oh yeah, my distant far distant third sister,
I've cut them off.
Be like, that's my sister. I was like, oh, okay, so like that, there's a fight to be had there, because like if they can listen to me in that moment, okay, but then you gotta it's just something you have to deal with. And again, I know that a lot of people putting in work, and no one's out here getting paid. And you got to remember, this is like the 5% of people that are active, right? But I mean, you got to start chipping away. But anyways, I'm gonna play this, and then we can ride out, because I thought it was a
well, good folks. See y'all later this week. But yeah, play the clip. But yeah, I just want to say goodbye.
And it
happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
To your point, it reminded me about the meeting I met you at, and people had that enlightening moment
Bingo.
You know, like, okay, we got to start putting in work. And RC even had a story over the weekend where he's like, you know what, I should have said something, but here we go.
And we should talk about that. We should talk about that. We'll talk to him about that. He wasn't part of the show today, but we should bring that up because I think it's a good learning lesson. Seriously, no, all jokes
Mhm.
aside.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we talk through it real quick?
No, no, no.
Next
Let's
time.
chat with him
Okay.
next time,
Next time.
folks.
That'll be
All right, but
great. I
we'll
was
ride up,
like,
folks. Have a great week, and thank y'all for tuning in to the Radical Roots podcast. I'm your co-host, Payron Baxter.
I'm co-host Ram Sandoval.
Dare say publicly, they say things to you as a white woman that they wouldn't dare say publicly or to anyone, and you are just floored and insulted by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if every white American were truly honest and really spoke out, we've all been in spaces around groups of other white people where off color and racist things are said. And it's happened our entire lives. And it's happened so much as you grow up and you enter adulthood. It wasn't until probably I was in my late 20s that I realized, like, this is really effed up. Like, this is pretty gross. And as my world became more diverse, I became more and more aware of it. And I think this type of racism that's shared secretly, elbow to elbow among white people, is the most insidious type of racism, because they know it's racist because they self-edit. They don't say the things that they say to Angie and me. They wouldn't say that in front of Joy or you, Dawn. They know enough to know that they can't say it in front of you. And it's going to take white allies like Angie and me and educating our children to stand up always and say, nobody is free until all of us are free. You leave everybody vulnerable and on the table unless you combat this at every step. And that starts within our own communities. And as white people, it's something that we can do in our own communities every single day, all day. It happens, especially in red states like ours. You hear off-color things all the time. And I have made a commitment that I will stand up against this. I will not have it spoken around me. And I think it is, everybody asks, what can we do right now? What can we do right now? Because the federal government seems an impossible mountain to climb. What we can do in our own communities are micro changes. If somebody is racist, draw a boundary with them and tell them that is a deal breaker. I know I've known you for 20 years, but I am not going to be friends with you until you educate and enlighten yourself. And those are the ways that we can make subtle changes to overcome this big mountain we all have to climb that manifested itself. All of the worst things of American culture have manifested itself in this horrific person, Donald Trump. But after Trump, all of this shit will still remain unless we start fixing it on a personal level in our personal spaces.
Behind the scenes of people, right. They say things to you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.